Niecey, the journey of you joining the world race was a very interesting one, and the interesting part about this whole thing is um, watching you grow through it all, and watching you learn some really important lessons. And the world race, their motto is wanting to watch God grow in us so that we can love others, and then in turn we can watch something really powerful happen and make a difference in other people's lives. So there's this personal relationship we're called to, the building of community, and then using those things to impact the world.
Yeah.
Now, walk us through how you got to this point, because it's an interesting thing, and we'll
Mhm.
kind of skim through and kind of
Yeah.
hit some high points here going. But tell us where it all started with you.
Right. So for me, um, as a child, I never felt called to missions, which that kind of got broken down a little bit in the whole process, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But um, in 2016, I went with the church to Honduras to do ministry there for about a week, and fell in love with not only travel but the children and the ministry and just other countries and cultures. And my heart was just hungry for more. I wanted, as an adult, I just felt like my faith was based on stuff that I had walked through as a teenager and not my own. Like it hadn't become my own unique faith. It was still the faith of the church that I went to, and I love you guys, but I needed that to be mine, and I needed it to
Mhm.
be my own, and I was hungry for more. And I started looking up different trips to be just traveling with. And then I realized, like, I don't want to just travel. I want to do something with my time. I want it to mean something. And so then I ended up, I think I Googled like Christian mission trips or something. I was looking for something kind of short term, and ran into Adventures in Missions, which is the organization that runs the world race. And then um, eventually led to finding the world race. And first thing that I was really interested in is their doctrine and their theology. I wanted it to line up with what I was believing myself. I didn't want to go into something that I didn't fully believe in, and I didn't fully back. And I wanted it to be spirit filled and spirit believing. And every single thing. I looked through the FAQs. I probably memorized their entire website. I looked up YouTube videos. I was all over the place, obsessing about like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Because I felt it. I knew that I was supposed to go, but I was afraid. It's 11 months to 11 countries. It's how much money? It's what I can't do that. Like I can't in my own way do that. And so I actually had a friend of mine, or a friend of a friend, who had gone on the world race, and we had kind of connected, but I hadn't really kept up with her story. And I just reached out to her and was like, "What? What? How? Can you tell me more about it?" She's like, "Let's meet. Let's meet for coffee." And we met, and it was a complete God thing. There were things in her story that lined up so well with mine and what I was walking through, and the fact that I was going through an identity crisis where I had no idea who I was. As a teenager, I was Niecey, the volleyball player, or Niecey, the homeschooler, or Niecey, the girl that did these things. And I was searching for who I really was. And especially as an adult, that's something super crucial to have. And so um, we met, and it was like every single excuse and every single fear that I had built up was answered and taken care of. And from there, it was just, now I just have to apply and trust the Lord. And the Lord actually closed the door for a second and told me not yet. Um, but he had called me to it. He had just said like, wait, timing is crucial. And so um, in the meantime, it was the Lord was really pouring into me about different giftings that He had given me. The fact that I wasn't not spiritual enough to have giftings, and that I was um, like a daughter that he loved and that he had given things to. And so I had several people speak into that and speak over that. And so even before I even got into it, the identity shift had already started to happen, and um, it was a mission trip. I didn't think that that's what it was about, but he knew. So then he said yes.
And he opened the door. And
Yeah,
walk us through real quick his provision and his teaching you a lesson about faith.
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's 11 countries, 11 months. It's a lot financially. Um, it just is. It's a big chunk of change, and I was sitting here believing like how I know that I can't do it in my own strength, but how? How? I trust you, but how? And he's like, if you trust me, you won't worry about the how. Just trust me. And it seemed like there are deadlines as we go through the process. And Adventures and Missions in the World Race, they're an amazing organization. Every single thing is a conversation. It's not a hard, set, fast rule. It's let's talk about your heart. Let's talk about your spirit. How are you doing? And as each deadline approached, my car would break down. I would need this. I would need that. I would have a bill coming up. And it was like every single time that there was a deadline that I needed to reach, something would happen in the physical where I was like, I can't. And, but every single time, the Lord sent a check. Or one day I was refreshing my fundraising page and saw that I had anonymously gotten a $10,000 donation that filled up most of my fundraising. I was almost fully funded in one setting, and I'm sitting there at work just like in shock. I can't speak. I'm like, what is happening? But I heard the Lord tell me, you said that where I call I provide, and I have told you that where I call I provide, and that happens every time. Don't worry about the how. I'll deal with it. And he dealt with it, and it was amazing and beautiful. So that was
Was there a little faith booster in that one?
it was absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right.
At that point, I had already said I'm kind of not worried about it, but I say that, but also, and I'm also thinking I'm not worried about it, but guys, kind of need that now.
Yeah. So you get there, you're able to have everything,
hmm
and you leave here to go to the now there's two real crucial moments that
hmm
God met you while you were in the training camp there.
Yes,
And you want to just walk through real quick what those meant to you,
absolutely.
because they were kind of paradigm shifts for you, because they really spoke to your heart about who God was, but also who He was bringing
hmm
around you to kind of shore you
Yeah.
up in that community that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go, they do a 10-day training camp where basically you rough it for 10 days. It's uh, a lot of tent camping, bucket showers that are freezing cold, Georgia heat. Um, the whole thing. They really prepare you for worst case scenario on the field. They do a lot of like scenarios of, oh, your bags got stolen, now you have to figure it out, things like that, and it's really really cool, but and really hard. But one of the things that I was struggling with night one was comparison. I was struggling with all of these people know who they are and they all know what they're called to do after the race and they all kind of know and they seem like they have it figured out. They didn't, but it's fine. None of us did. Um, but that's what I was seeing. I was
Mhm.
seeing they're receiving words. I'm not receiving words. I don't is this really where you've called me and who you've called me to? And that was completely broken down first morning. The girls just circled around me and just loved me really hard. And we had a lesson that was on our purpose. And Andrew Sherman, which is one of the guys that kind of runs the program, spoke on how we're made to be loved. That's something that we hear in the church all the time. Growing up, I've heard that every day of my life. Jesus loves you. It kind of becomes cliche after a while. You hear it, but it doesn't really mean like, oh yeah, I know he loves me. He loves everyone. I had all the head knowledge. I knew all of the things. I just needed to know them. And there's big difference there between knowing it in your head and knowing it in your heart. And I didn't realize that I didn't know it in my heart until we were talking about this lesson on what is our purpose? Why were we created in the first place? We were made to be loved. That is the Garden of Eden reason we were put there is we were there for relationship, for to love and be loved by the God who created us and who sees us. And I heard that and was like, I know that already. I know that. I know that. I know that. Until he had us stand up and he's praying over us. And I don't know exactly what happened, but immediately it was like paradigm shift. Everything changed. I felt the presence of the Lord in a way I've never felt him before.
Mhm.
And it's easy to say it was a church camp feeling, but it's different. It's way different. It's the best feeling I've ever felt in my entire life, where I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I am not only loved, but seen and heard by the God who created
Hallelujah.
me.
Yes.
And there's something incredible that happens when you feel that for the
Mhm.
first time and actually know without a doubt. Like I knew. He loves everybody, doesn't he? Like he loves everybody. But that love was mine now. Like it was mine. It was my own. It was unique to who I was
Mhm.
and who I am. And I'm like trying not to make a scene as I'm like wrecked. and the guy sees me and he just calls to my mentor and says, "Hey, your girl needs you." And all of a sudden, I felt the the entire squad of people who didn't even really know me yet. We hadn't started life together, circle around me and just lift me up in prayer and just love me. And as I'm feeling the physical arms, I'm also feeling like the Lord just wrap me up. And it was the first time that I felt the Lord physically wrap me in his arms when I didn't need him, when I wasn't grieving something, when I wasn't asking him, Lord, I just need you right now. It was, I love you. You're finally getting it. Finally, you understand what I've been trying to tell you for 24 years. This is it. This is
It's good.
what it is. And that led into the fitness hike, which is insane and intense. I'm not a hiker. I do not hike, but this fitness hike was even hard for the people who were hikers. It's something that it's a timed thing, and you do a certain amount of miles in a certain amount of time. And it basically just makes sure that you're physically able to handle, first of all, the pack that you carry, which is extremely heavy. They say that you have up to 50 pounds. Do not make that bag 50 pounds. You have to carry that around. It is heavy. Um, and they had us put on our hiking backpacks, which are about 65 liters. And we hike with those. So first of all, I'm not a hiker. Secondly, I'm carrying around a pack that's probably 30 pounds, and it's hot. We're there before the sun comes up, but it's Georgia. It's hot. It was August. Yeah, it's hot all the time. So we start the hike, and I immediately know that I'm in pain. My shoes are not the right kind of shoes, so they're giving me problems. My calves have decided that today's the day to cramp, so I've got that going for me. I'm just not feeling ready to do this. I already had some fear and anxiety leading up to it because I saw the hill that we would have to walk up and said, there's no way I can do that. And because I had to stop 3 times just walking it regularly. And now I'm on the hike and I'm like, I'm probably going to pass out. It's fine. And I had a teammate that was beside me, and I remember doubling over and saying, like, I think I may be sick. And she's like, all right, well then be sick. Let's go. We got to do this. Let's just get sick, get it over with. Like we're going to do this. And it was in that moment that I realized this is why the Lord said, not yet, because I needed these people. I specifically needed the people that I had on my squad to walk beside me. It wasn't just a physical thing. It was a spiritual thing. It was I can't do this in my own strength. I can't. I need you. And I remember just whispering like, oh, Lord, I need you. And it was like during the hike, I felt his presence in a way I've never felt before. It's the weirdest thing to say, but I felt him on a hike where I was dying and in a lot of pain, but I felt him. And I felt him just like I'd felt him a couple nights before when he said, I love you. It was in that moment. The sun's coming up over the like the trees, and there's a like an electrical pole and then like another something, and it makes like a cross. And the sun hits that just right. And I like don't even notice it until one of my friends was like, guys, guys, look at that. And it was like, there it is. There it is. It's not I was in the valley part of the hike, but that's when I felt him the most. Was in the valley when I knew I'm gonna have to face that hill a second time. And I can't do it in my own strength. And I need you. And I felt him. I needed to hear the song Hills and Valleys. My friends who had already finished the hike and were coming back to cheer me on and make sure that I finished just start singing this song. They don't even really know the lyrics. They're just kind of figuring it out as they go. But it was in that moment where I knew, regardless, the Lord did not call me this far to tell me, sorry, gotta go home. You're not gonna do it. I knew that he was calling me to do this, and I knew
Good.
that he
What
was
what
gonna do it.
so you finished it,
Mhm.
and you had to do some other things later,
Yeah.
but the whole thing is you're done. You
Yeah.
get on a plane, you almost miss the plane
Yeah, we
to your
almost missed our
first
first flight.
destination,
It was wonderful.
but you get to Peru,
Yeah, we do.
you get off there and you start a process there. But one of the most memorable things in Peru
Mhm.
was not the capital city where you felt very uncomfortable about the street ministry part of it.
Right.
But what was the impacting part when you went down into the Amazon basin? Talk to us a little bit about what that was like when you
Yeah.
walked in there and the contact you had with some of the you were in charge of something. You want to talk about that? And then how that translated into ministry there that really
Mhm.
started another shift in you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were based in Lima. That was where our ministry was. But our pastors, Marita and David, their daughter is actually a missionary to a village called Chuquibambilla in the village in the jungle. And so we were sent there for a week, and um, I knew that we were taking with us some Days for Girls kits. Days for Girls is like an organization or program that basically provides reusable products to women and girls in villages where education is uh, kind of taboo. People don't really talk about women and how to take care of themselves. And so I brought with me, or we brought with us, a big duffel full of these kits that are basically reusable feminine products and hygiene products and things where the girls could learn about that and how to take care of themselves and what it even is. And so um, since I had the role of Beauty for Ashes coordinator, which basically means that I made sure that women's ministry happened, and the opportunity for that, I basically just encouraged the team to make sure that that happened. They had given me the responsibility of making sure that we held a girls' day where we brought the girls in and had fun and educated and just loved on them. And so Belen was super excited about me coming in, and I didn't realize the weight of the reality of these girls until I got there. And we're sitting in our first meeting or lesson or church service, if you want to call it that. And these girls are filing in. I have no idea what I'm going to speak about, and I clearly heard the Lord tell me worth. Just one word, worth. That's all I heard. And I'm watching these girls and I'm understanding a little bit more about the fact that they don't really know what they're worth. They don't really understand the fact that they belong to someone, that they are loved. They don't really grasp that. And so I knew that that's what I was supposed to speak to the girls about. And
Because in that tribal
So,
culture, they were
yeah,
more of a thing, an object, than they might have been
yeah,
a person, right?
hmm
In some senses of the
exactly.
word.
So there is a lack of education and about just like love and marriage and all of the things that go into that, and there's a lack of it there, and so they're seeing one thing, they're watching their parents' example, but then they're also like hearing from their parents like um, abstinence and stuff, but the houses are set up to where they're basically watching something completely different. And so these girls are having sex very, very young. They're the youngest ones are probably 8, which broke my heart. I was wrecked. I didn't know what to do with that information. I was sitting there just stunned, like, how am I supposed to? What do I do here? How do I teach these girls on one night how loved they are? Sorry. How loved they are and how precious they are to the Lord, and how do I educate them in one night? That's all I have. And Belen came to me because she was the one that was kind of bringing up why it was so important and why I was there. And she just basically said, "You're just the beginning. This is just the beginning of what I was already wanting to put into place. You're just bringing us the tools and the resources to do it." And she said, "I will from here be making sure that these girls are taken care of, and that they're getting their mothers are also getting educated, and that they are getting educated. And that's that's why it's so important that you come and bring these."
Why was worth so important for you to share with them?
Because worth was what the Lord was walking me through too. And it's interesting because in my head, I always thought, like, I can't talk to these girls about something that I'm also fighting and struggling with. Like, how am I supposed to teach these girls about worth when I'm still figuring out who I am and what my identity is? And that doesn't make sense, but it does. It makes so much sense to the kingdom of God, because as I'm speaking about worth, I am understanding the things that I am teaching
Hallelujah.
them. And so it's not a preaching to the choir moment, it's an aha moment. It's an, oh, this is the passion that I have for making sure these girls get it. That's the passion the Lord has for me when I am
Hallelujah.
teaching them this. So it was an incredibly beautiful, beautiful night. We had one of the girls who came who basically just encouraged the girls to speak, and that was really beautiful to have her there and do that. So it ended up being a really, really amazing night. So
Now, your time in Peru, you got to do multiple things, and the great thing about it is that as she went, they work with organizations that are already in the country,
mhm,
so that follow up continues.
yeah,
It's not just a one hit wonder and hope it
yeah,
works. They go in and they help establish certain things, begin certain processes, but then eventually that the groups that are there continue the
yeah,
work amongst the people that you are able to minister to. So there's follow up. It's not just
yeah,
a one hit and it's done type of a thing.
yeah.
Now, during that time, that process, you ended up being improved for 2 months,
Mhm,
but there were some difficulties that happened in the team that you were with, and there was one person that was an element of kind of brought a little bit of dissension in that process, and we're not going to
mhm,
get into all of
yeah,
those things. But it was during that time that God began to unpack some things for you, because there was some lies that the enemy had
mhm,
spoken in your life, and towards
yeah,
the end of those 2 months before you went to Argentina, um, God not only revealed the lies, but he started revealing some of
the
the
truth.
truths that he was
Mhm,
speaking over you. You want to walk us through that, because it was really important, because it was in the midst of that difficult moment, that valley of differences, that as you were trying to build community, that God used what seemed incongruent
yeah,
and out of place to actually begin to speak, reveal lies, and begin to speak truths to you. What
mhm.
was that like?
Um, yeah, that was so. one of the biggest lies that I didn't realize I was believing was that I I did not have a voice. And I'm speaking now, so you know that it's not my actual physical voice. I believed the lie that my voice didn't matter, that no one was listening, that even when I did speak, nobody took me seriously. Um, I was meant to support others, but not do anything too crazy. Um, and by that, my silence, um, my silence won for the first little while. I had been vulnerable with my team and expressed like, guys, I think I may have believed the lie that my voice doesn't matter. And I may not have said it exactly like that, but they knew exactly what I meant, and they began to speak truth into that. But again, it was all like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I mean, I know, but it was all head knowledge. And about the middle of month 2, my team was struggling. Month 2 was a hard month for my team. Team-wise, ministry was fine, but we were struggling to stay unified and struggling to, be a team and effectively do ministry. Um, there were things that were just hindering us in our ministry because of things that were happening back at home, for lack of a better word. Well, it was our home. That's where we stayed for the month. But um, yeah, it was probably the end of month 2 when we all sat around and started talking about where each one of us had caused disunity within the team. The Lord revealed to me, um, by keeping silent,
Mhm.
I was causing more damage. By not speaking up, not saying what I was seeing, not speaking the truth in love, I was hurting the team. I may not have been the cause of the issue, but I wasn't fixing it. I was being um, a peacekeeper instead of a peacemaker, which is huge. There's a huge difference between a peacemaker and a peacekeeper. And I was keeping the peace instead of trying to make peace with what was happening. So,
As you transitioned that, what there was a gift that God made very relevant to you, and and out of fear of being misunderstood,
mhm,
you didn't start using it till a little bit later on.
yeah,
But what was that gift that was trying to replace the lie with the truth?
yeah. So I kept hearing my teammates tell me that I was speaking with wisdom. What? I'm what? And they were like, "No, you're very when you do speak up, you speak with a lot of wisdom. Like you need to do it more often." And I'm over here sitting like, I don't think you know what that word means. I don't think because I have always admired Solomon in the Bible, and so I've always put wisdom on this pedestal of like that is the like one of the gifts that you just strive for but never actually achieve. And the Lord reminded me of when I was 9 years old. I loved Solomon's story, and of course I'm a child, so I didn't realize like all of the other stuff in his story. But anyways, I just remember praying like, Lord, if you give me nothing else, I just want to be wise. I just want wisdom. And I prayed that when I was 9 years old and then forgot about it. Completely forgot I'd ever prayed it. And I prayed it for like weeks probably. Um, and the Lord brought that memory up randomly. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, and then I put pressure on myself because it was like, I can't speak up unless it's wise and profound. And what if it's not wise and profound? You know, like, and then we're our own worst critics. So it's like, oh, that's not wise and profound. You can't say that. You know, it just became this other lie that I believed where it was like, I can't step into a gifting that's bragging if I say that I have a gift. You know, that's a lie, first of all. That is a lie. If the Lord has given you a gift, He's given it to you for a reason, and He's given it to you so that you can use it to advance the kingdom.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that I am gifted in these things, because there are some things you're not going to have that gifting, and that's where another person comes into play. That's what the analogy of the church being the body is about. But if
Mhm.
an like in the Bible when it talks about, if one part says to the other part, like,
Mhm.
you're not needed, you're not necessary. Well, the same is true of yourself. If you're a hand and you really want to be a foot, you're kind of telling the Lord that he didn't create the right gift in the first place. Like, that's exactly what you're doing. So, anyways, but that's what happened there.
So you learned that you had that gift. And then when you moved to Argentina and you guys went to hospitals and started praying there,
Mhm.
you discovered a second gift that you didn't know you had. But the interesting thing
Yeah.
about it is it was linked to a man who didn't believe in miracles and actually received a miracle while
Training camp.
at training camp. And then
Mhm.
talk just real quick, talk about
Yeah.
what finding that meant and what you ended up doing
Mhm.
to kind of make sure that he would be able to continue doing what God was calling him to do.
Yeah, so first of all, his story is really, really cool. It's not my story to tell, but essentially, the Lord healed his back at training camp, and he was one of my teammates, and um, his story is incredible, and just the amount of faith that it gave him to be able to speak that. And so that became a part of his testimony when we were doing evangelism in the
Because he
streets or in the
wasn't
market.
supposed to make it to the world race
Yeah, he
because he
wasn't
had
even
messed up
really
his back.
supposed to. He
He
wasn't
lived in
even really
proverbial
supposed to do
pain,
it.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he lived in tragic amounts of pain, and um, the Lord completely healed him. Well, every time that he would go and share his testimony in the markets or on the streets, um, he would be out of commission the next day or two. And we didn't like even think anything about it. We were just like, huh, that's funny. He just shared his testimony about it. And then in Argentina, we were like, whoa, wait a second. We just did hospital ministry. He was perfectly fine. Now his back hurts to the point where he can't get out of bed. And he shared his testimony. And it was right then and there where I just got this anger where it was like, are you kidding me? That's that story has touched several people's hearts, and some people have even given their lives to the Lord. And you're telling me that the enemy is sitting over here attacking his body because he wants him to believe that he wasn't really healed, and he wants to take that part of the testimony away. And I was so mad. And I just remember, like, let's pray right now. And so we started praying, and somebody said, hey, that happened the other day too, where you just felt that about one of the other people. And I was like, yeah. And my squad leader looked at me and was like, does that happen like a lot? And started asking me some prompting questions. And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. And now that I think about it, I guess so. And he was like, I think you have the gift of intercession. And I was like, I don't want that. Because again, it was one of those where I was like, oh no, now I have to, like, what does that even mean? And and what does that look like? How do I intercede for people? And how do I do it effective? Like, how do I do it right? First of all, that's silly. Intercession is a conversation between you and the Lord about people and about things around you. You're interceding on the person's behalf and coming to them. It would be like if your sibling did something wrong and you're coming to the parent and saying, like, hey, please don't, like, please, this is what really happened. And you're fighting for that person on.
Don't beat him to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not that that's really what happens, but honestly, that's
Mhm.
that's really what intercession is. And it took me a little bit to grasp that, because again, I was like, oh no, now I have to step into this and I have to do it right the first time. And what if I mess it up, and all of those things.
But it changed the dynamic of his sharing because then
Mhm.
while he was ministering in that capacity,
Yeah.
you were covering him. And so he was
Mhm.
able to begin to do that without having the collateral damage
Yeah.
repercussions later
Mhm.
for having been obedient to what God was calling him to do.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
powerful confirmation of what God can do in your life. So
Mhm.
so as you guys were ministering to people, then you guys were collectively getting together and ministering for each other. And so actually working as a team to make sure that maximum effect was
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Yeah.
that just an incredible thing for you guys to experience on your own? No one was
Yeah.
doing it for you. That's the great thing. Your leaders were not doing it for you.
Mhm.
This was something you guys, as you were doing it, God began to unpack it amongst
Yeah.
yourselves. and understanding and learning what that was like, and no one stepped in to fill in the gap, you had to start using those gifts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I loved about the program that I was with was self governance is encouraged. Our leadership is there and they're back behind us 100%, and they're there to kind of help us encourage aha moments and encourage us in things. But you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, and that's how my race went. Where it was me figuring things out, my team figuring things. Like we walked through it. We heard the Lord ourselves. We were seeing things, and our faith became our own.
So then you were growing in God,
Mhm.
you were building the community, and
Mhm.
now you guys, because of the first two, then you started making a difference in people's
Yeah.
lives. And so that was really working for you
Mhm.
guys at that point. Now, I know they were in Mendoza, Argentina, where Michelle was born, so they were in a blessed place.
I love
Um,
Argentina.
there you go. Now you guys went to Togo after that, and at
Mhm.
that point, um, the situation, someone,
Things were starting to combust a little, yeah.
yeah, and actually someone was had to kind of leave the place,
Mhm.
the team, because they never were able to completely um, consolidate and fit in, and it was unfortunate for them,
Yeah.
and it was a tough thing. But at that point, there were some shifts in some of your team changes also, right, at that
Mhm.
point in Togo?
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about Togo, because it was an interesting place where you were at, and there was another aha moment for you, because as you transitioned teams, God began to use that first gift that
Yeah.
He'd been giving you, but you were in a place where you couldn't speak the language,
Right.
and it was a French
Mhm.
setting. Their language is French, and so you were in this setting, and what was ministry like there? Talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about what
Um,
Togo meant to you.
yeah, so first of all, um, I will be honest, Africa was probably the part of my route where I was probably the least excited just because I didn't really know anything about the countries in Africa that I was going to, and uh, I don't know, it just wasn't part of the route that really excited me, but I will tell you, I learned so much in Africa and actually fell in love with the continent and the countries that I was in, and, um, Togo was really Togo was really special to me because we were put in my team was split into different schools. We went to different schools and ministered. So part of my team were doing Bible lessons throughout the day to different classrooms. I was at a bilingual school where they teach English and French. Um, French is the main language of Togo, but it's not the French of France because there are so many different tribal languages and local languages within local dialects within the country of Togo. If you like look at history and how how the groups were all set up and then they were split, they all kind of gathered in one area, and so you have several different local languages that are getting mixed in with French, and so it's easy for two people to be conversing and not really understand what's happening. And now we're coming in and we speak English, and translators are usually provided, but at the bilingual school that I was at, I actually chose to work with the 3 and 4 year olds, and they haven't really started learning English yet. A lot of the kids in my class are teachers' kids, so they are kind of hearing it from their parents. But the teacher was a French-speaking teacher and didn't really understand English. There was a lot of hand gestures, lots and lots of hand gestures, lots of Google Translate, which actually does not translate well. Google Translate is not an effective tool. I mean, it is sort of, but it's not. Um, so really, our my ministry there was a little frustrating at first because I'm like, how am I supposed to share the love of Jesus with these people if I don't have a translator and I don't have somebody that's there? But there was so much love in that classroom, so much love. And I actually took one of the boys and was like, he was my I don't want to say my project, but I really felt super drawn to him. He was a child who was basically nonverbal and didn't really uh, participate in class that well, and was kind of new to being in school and was still learning the aspects of all of that. And by the end of the month, he was laughing and playing with me and playing with the children and attempting to do classwork and really applying himself. And that was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
And Togo is known as probably the birthplace of what?
A voodoo. Yeah. So it's there we didn't see a whole lot of it, but we definitely saw it like in the streets. Like just different things that were at shops and such. It wasn't as dark as we thought it would be openly, but there's definitely a spiritual heaviness there. Um,
They've kind
and
of weaved it
mhm,
into their to
yeah,
some of their other beliefs, right?
yeah. So Catholicism in Africa is mostly used to um, they use that as a mask for their for animism. So they're still so idol worship and tribal cultures are practicing under the guise of Catholicism because it's taboo to do those things. So they really needed who Jesus was. That
Mhm.
was the reality of what they needed, and so that was
The aha moment you had was when you started actually stepping in and helping with the teams, and you started
mhm.
using what gift there?
Uh, well, I was actually stepping
Yeah.
into all of them, but um, my voice became something that I began to use. We basically were told we're giving you guys each individual growth plans to try and fix the chaos in your team and try to bring you guys unified. And my part of that growth plan was stepping into my voice and speaking up and um, and giving feedback to the team, um, which was extremely intimidating. And I thought that I would fail. Not really fail, but I just thought like I'm not good at this. Like this isn't. And every single one of my team members was like, "Why haven't you been doing this the last 4 months? Like why? Like you're really gifted in this area." But it was then that I started to really get into my heart that like it's okay for me to say that I have gifts and it's okay for me to operate in those because that's the way that he created me. That's what he created me to do is to establish kingdom and I can't establish kingdom if I'm sitting over here like, "Oh yeah, I have no gifts and I'm just here to
So the
assist."
feedback became a very important part of what you were able to
Mhm.
bring to the team
Yeah,
at last in
absolutely.
that place. Now
Mhm.
you guys moved from there to Ghana, and we're going to go through these last
Yeah.
two kind of quick. But it was a little different because English was spoken there in the
Yes.
country, so it made it real easy. Although
Mhm.
there was a couple of hang-ups with the religious system there, but it's also where you did some role changes and also during that time, there was one particular little girl that you came in contact with that I want you to tell a story about
Yeah.
because as you started falling in love with these nations and with the
Mhm.
people and everything else, you had this one encounter that I really believe was so powerful
Yeah.
that you were able to minister because of things that God had been ministering to you.
Mhm. So Ghana was team changes. It was completely new. We reorganized basically. And so I was on a completely different team, new dynamics, new roles, figuring each other out for the first time. Especially since we'd already had one team experience that was like on my old team, we did this. I don't really know that that works. And so we had to figure each other out again, which was really cool and also challenging. And hard doesn't always mean bad, so that's good. But one of the things that we were doing that month was we were ministering in the school that the church ran. And one of the little girls in my class, she was 8 years old. Her name's Benet, and she's absolutely beautiful. She's probably one of the most beautiful girls I've ever laid eyes on. And she began to ask me these questions, and they were really funny and really cute. But then I realized the depth of what my response would be. They were questions like, "Hey, auntie," that's what they call teachers in Africa, and a lot of the countries in Africa, they call them auntie and uncle. And um, she said, "Auntie, were you around when the Europeans came?" I'm like, "Honey, how old do you think I am?" and then and then I kind of laughed about it. And then she said, "Auntie, if I go to America, will my skin be like yours? Auntie, if I go to America, will my hair look like yours? Auntie, if you stay here, will you look like me?" And I began to realize that although they were curious child questions, I had the ability and the opportunity to speak into her individuality and just really speak into who she was as a woman. And I looked at her and I said, "Benay, my hair won't look like yours, and your hair won't look like mine, and my skin won't look like yours, and your skin won't look like mine, although I'll probably get darker. But there's something really beautiful about that." I said, "You don't look like your friends, and I don't look like mine. My team leader is blonde and tall and has blue eyes, and I am short and have dark hair and dark eyes. We're both beautiful, and we're both made in the image of the Lord." And I began to speak into her character and how, like, studious she was, very smart, and I began to speak into that as well. And in that moment, I realized the depth of what the Lord was walking me through as well, and had already walked me through, of my own individuality and my own identity. And
You called out the beauty in her too, which was so
exactly,
important for her to
exactly.
hear.
And it's just really cool how the Lord uses other people's other people and their struggles that are the same as yours for you to speak into them, but then also, like, speak back to yourself. And so that was really, really cool. And she and I became really close throughout the month and such. So that was a really beautiful moment to be able to speak into that.
During that time, there was a powerful healing also
Yes.
with your team. You want to just walk real quick through that?
Yeah, yeah. So one of my
That we
teammates,
agreed with you on too on that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So one of my teammates received a call from um her mother, and essentially the mother had told her that she was going to have surgery because they think that she may have throat or thyroid cancer. And she was going to have surgery to figure out, they were going to have to biopsy and figure out exactly what was happening. And all of a sudden, my teammate is obviously terrified. She's halfway around the world. And her mother is going through this. And she's like, "Am I going to pack up my bags tomorrow? Like, I can't be here if that's what it turns out to be. Like, I can't finish if my mom is struggling with
Mhm.
this." And we immediately were like, "Well, we don't accept that." And so we began to pray, and we decided that on the day of the surgery we would fast and pray. And so that night, um, we had a 14-hour time difference, something like that. So night for us was morning, morning for you guys. And so um, she we had her lay out on the floor, and we said, "You're gonna stand in the gap for your mom, or lay in the gap for your mom for now." And we began to pray over her. And then we went about our day, and or went about our night, and we're getting ready for bed. And she receives a text message from her mother, and she said, "Shouldn't you be in surgery right now? You should be in surgery." She said, "The doctor came in right before they were gonna put me under and told me that there was no reason to do the surgery, that my scans looked fine, and that they were just going to refer me to an ear, nose, and throat to figure out why she was having some pain. But other than that, her scans were clear and she was fine."
Hallelujah.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
Hallelujah. Yes. All right. We'll finish with this one real quick.
Hmm.
You were in Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory
Hmm.
Coast,
Yeah.
and that was the closing of your time. And 2 weeks into it, you guys had to come home. But
Hmm.
just talk a little bit about that last couple days you were ministering to truckers, and
Yes.
you wanna tell the story, that one story especially, and how many
Yes.
came to the Lord that day, but tell the
Yeah.
story about that one
Yeah.
trucker in particular.
So we were a part of a port or trucker ministry that's there in Cote d'Ivoire, where they basically go in and just share Jesus. It's
Mhm.
evangelism in the truck stop. And the majority of the people coming in to these truck stops are Muslim, um, which that was really cool because I got to experience what Islam actually looks like and not just our idea in our head of what it looks like, which is really, really cool. Um, but also we had this man that we came in contact with, and he spoke both French and his local national dialect. He wasn't from Cote d'Ivoire, and he was really curious to know what we were there about. And so our translators began to tell him about the gospel and tell him about Jesus. And he gets really excited and begins to tell a story about how when he was a boy, he lived next to a church, and he could hear them praising and worshiping the Lord all the time, and how the Lord spoke to him when he was a child, but he didn't realize who it was until way later, until we're there and we're sharing. And there was something in what they shared that reminded him of what the Lord had spoken to him as a child. And he agrees, like, he wants to accept Christ right then and there. And so we pray over him, and we do all those things, and we give him the micro SD card that has the Bible on it, and turn the corner, and there's another gentleman there who's curious, but he doesn't speak French. He speaks his local dialect, his local language, and or his country's language. And the man who just received Christ turns the corner, and it's the same language. And he agrees. Like, he's so happy. His countenance is completely full of joy. And he says, I'll translate for you. He speaks both French and his, so we have like a three-way translation that's happening. That's the gospel's being shared in French and then translated to this national dialect and then to this man. And then when one of us would speak, it would be English to French to French to, and the countenance of this man who just received, like, it was the perfect example of making disciples. It was the perfect example of what it looks like for a man to actually accept Jesus and then immediately go and tell.
Mhm.
And he was just so full of joy. And the other gentleman ended up wanting to accept Christ too. And so both of them are full of joy and going across the trucker ministry. Listen to what they have to say. They're the real deal. And it was so incredible to see. Um, yeah.
That last day they were there, how many men, Muslim men came to the Lord that day?
Mm, about 30. And that's not just my team, we were with another team. So it was all of us going and evangelizing, and all together we had about 30, um, 30 salvations. So, yeah.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Amen. 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 Now, we won't go through all the stuff, but you
Yeah.
received notification that COVID was hitting and that you needed to come back to the States, and it was like just a few hours later you were on a plane headed
Yeah.
back. You got to the States, didn't hardly have enough time to debrief. Ended up um, in Arkansas for a little bit. God spoke to you some words about next steps. But
Yeah.
um, just real quick, right now, I know we don't have time
Mhm.
because we got a couple other things
Yeah.
we need to do, but um, if you were to sum it up, I know that there's a possibility of maybe two or three things in August, and you don't have to make a decision till that time comes.
Yeah.
But there's a desire to go back, probably over to Southeast Asia or something like that,
Yeah.
and minister. And so, just tell us two things about that, and then um, just wrap it up the way you want to, and then just pray for us, would you?
Yeah. So the Lord actually told me to put all plans about the future on hold until May 25th, which I thought was really cool. But I was like, also 2 weeks later, we're going home. So what do you mean May 25th? You mean March 25th? Because I need to have a plan like tomorrow. And he was like, no. And then we received our possible next steps on May 20th. And again, I got to see the Lord's incredible timing because I was like, of course we get our our next steps on May 20th. And basically, they've opened up every program possible to us and said, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, we're here for it. And a couple of us from Z are from my squad are looking at going back out in January to do disaster relief in Southeast Asia. One of our long-term bases there. We have one in Cambodia, one in India, and one in Thailand. I'm hoping Thailand. And so that's tentatively our plan, but also countries are still closed and borders are still closed. So we don't know what that will look like. Um, so the Lord was like, but I still said Denver. So you're going to Denver, right? I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Real quick, Niecey, who was who was the Niecey that left here, and who was the Niecey that came back? Would you just, in just a few words, what changes has God brought to your life?
He has made my faith my own in so many ways, completely changed uh, and broken down the lies of the enemy that I was believing as a girl that followed me into adulthood, um, and have revealed incredible truths about who I am and what he's called me to. And I'm excited. I'm really, really excited to see like where he calls me and what he calls me to, and he's revealing those things to me. I'm a little impatient sometimes, but he's revealing those things to me, and I'm really excited about some things that he's working in my heart right now about. So
So would you just pray over us that
absolutely.
the prayer of obedience, that as we say yes to him, that he can change and transform our lives and equip us with the necessary gifts to carry out the work, even if we don't feel like we are worthy,
Mm-hmm.
or that we can, or that that's even something that's available
Yeah,
to us, but that he makes it available. When we say yes to him in obedience, he can transform our lives.
absolutely.
So would you just pray that
Yeah.
over everybody here, that they understand that this is possible
Mhm.
for them also?
I'm gonna stand up because I pace a little bit when
It's
I pray.
fine.
Okay. God, just thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for your love and your presence and just who you are. Thank you for calling each one of us to be a part of your kingdom and establishing your kingdom. Father, I just pray right now over every person in this room, Lord. I pray that as we go out, Lord, that you would speak to each one of them. We know that you want to speak to us, and so speak to each person in this room right now about who you are and who they are. Those two are hand in hand. We are because you are,
Mhm.
and we can because you can through us. And so, Father, right now, I just come against fear. I come against any lie of the enemy that we're not worthy, that we're not called because we are. Father, I come against any hindrance of the spirit that would say we can't because of this or we can't because of that. Lord, I break those down right now in the name of Jesus. They have no place in this room.
Yes, Lord.
Father, I pray that each person in this room would understand that they are a part of the kingdom and it is okay that it doesn't
Yes, Lord.
look like
Hallelujah. Yes,
the next person.
Lord. Mhm.
In fact, it is more than okay. It is perfect that their giftings look different than someone else's.
Mhm.
I pray that you would reveal spiritual gifts within this place, Lord,
Mhm.
that you would not only reveal them, but also show them how to walk in those, to
Yes,
step
Lord.
into those. Continue to show me how to step into my giftings as well. And so, Father, we just thank you and we praise you. We pray that as we go throughout our week, that you would begin to do a new work in us
Mhm.
because you want to do it. And we just
Amen.
pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.